Hello and welcome. Take a moment to settle in. Today, we're going to talk about something that hides in plain sight. It's a word we hear all the time, usually thrown around as an insult or a political slogan, but we rarely stop to look at what it actually does to the human interior. We're talking about greed. In our modern world, we tend to view greed as a personality quirk. Maybe we see it as just being ambitious or wanting security. But if we look deeper into the vast history of spiritual philosophy and metaphysical inquiry, we find a much more startling definition. Greed isn't just about having too much stuff. It is considered a fundamental disease of the soul. It is a root condition that halts our evolution. I want to explore this with you, not from a judgmental place, but from a diagnostic one. We're going to look at why we get attached to things, what that attachment does to us while we're alive, and, perhaps most fascinatingly, what happens to that attachment after we die. Because according to many spiritual traditions, the things we own end up owning us. And that ownership doesn't necessarily stop when we take our last breath. So, let's explore the anatomy of greed. To understand greed, we have to understand the lie it tells us. The lie is a simple two-word phrase: I own. I own this house. I own this money. I own this land. Spiritual philosophy challenges this right at the foundation. It suggests that humans do not truly own material wealth. How could we? We arrive with nothing and we leave with nothing. Think of your life like a stay in a hotel. You are checked in for a few decades. The room is yours to use. The bed, the view, the amenities, they are placed in your care. But you are a guest. You are a traveler passing through. Greed is the delusion of the guest who starts believing they own the hotel. They start drilling holes in the walls to hide their luggage. They refuse to let the housekeeping staff in. They panic at the idea of checking out. If we don't own our wealth, what is it? It is a deposit. It is a loan entrusted to us by the creative force of the universe. And here is the tricky part. Profound wealth is often a more difficult spiritual test than poverty. We call it a slippery trial. Why? Because when you have everything you want, your ego inflates. It excites pride. It excites the senses. It makes you feel powerful and independent of the divine. When you are struggling, you are often forced to look upward for help. When you are drowning in gold, you tend to only look down at what you have gathered. So the first step in understanding greed is realizing that it is a case of mistaken identity. You are confusing the luggage with the traveler. Now, let's look at the symptoms. If you are suffering from this spiritual attachment, how does it manifest right now? We often imagine the greedy person as happy, like a king sitting on a pile of treasure. But the reality is much darker. The primary symptom is perpetual anxiety. If your sense of self-worth is tied to something external, something that can burn down, be stolen, or lose value, you can never truly rest. You live in a state of defensive fear. There is a concept in spiritual psychology of the pungent hurt. It's that sharp, physical pain a greedy person feels when they lose even a tiny fraction of their wealth. They might have millions, but losing $20 ruins their day. It is an insatiable thirst. But the more dangerous symptom is stagnation. We are here, in this physical experience, to grow, to expand our intelligence and our ability to love. That is the only wealth we actually keep, our moral qualities. When a soul focuses entirely on material accumulation, they hit the pause button on their evolution. They are wasting their time. Imagine you are sent to a university to get a degree. But instead of going to class, instead of studying, you spend 4 years collecting rocks from the campus garden. You fill your dorm room with thousands of rocks. You guard them. You polish them. Then graduation day comes. You have to leave the dorm. You have to leave the rocks. And you realize, with a sudden, terrible clarity, that you didn't learn anything. You just moved stones around. That is the tragedy of a life consumed by greed. This brings us to the most compelling part of this philosophy, the consequences beyond death. Many metaphysical accounts and near-death research suggests that death does not magically change your personality. You don't suddenly become an enlightened angel just because you shed your body. You are still you. Your desires, your obsessions, your habits, they all cross over with you. So, what happens to the mind that is obsessed with material things? It stays obsessed. There are accounts of consciousnesses that remain earthbound. Because they love their money more than anything else, they stay near the money. They hover in the homes they left behind. They stand guard by the safe or the bank accounts. But here is the torture. They are now ghosts in their own lives. They suffer from what we might call the torment of uselessness. Imagine the despair of a consciousness watching their heirs divide up the fortune, watching them spend it on things the deceased person would have hated, watching it be squandered. They want to scream, "That's mine! Stop!" But no one can hear them. They suffer the anguish of possession without the power of control. There is a famous parable often told in these traditions. Let's call it the story of Max. Max was a wealthy lord. He had everything a person could want, but he used it only for his own pleasure. He ignored the suffering around him. He stepped over the poor to get to his carriage. He lived entirely for his own ego. When Max died, he didn't go to a fiery hell. He simply woke up in a state of confusion. He was still obsessed with his status, but he had no audience. He was destitute in the spirit world because he had brought no internal wealth with him. And the story goes that to heal, Max had to return. He had to be reborn. But this time, the universe, in its corrective wisdom, placed him in the life of a beggar. He had to spend a lifetime enduring the very neglect he had shown to others. He had to learn, through direct experience, what it felt like to have nothing. This wasn't punishment from an angry deity. It was a course correction. It was the only way his soul could learn the lesson he had missed. These stories can feel heavy, but the beauty of this perspective is that there is always a remedy. There is always a way to heal the soul. If we recognize these tendencies in ourselves, that tightening of the chest when we have to give something away, that fear of not having enough, how do we cure it? The remedy has three parts. First, there is the moral remedy. The antidote to greed is active altruism. It's the ancient law. You must give to receive. But this isn't just about writing a check to make yourself feel better. True charity involves a kind of self-sacrifice. It means silencing your personal interest for the good of another. The wealthy are called to be stewards. If you have resources, you are a manager for the universe. Your job is to use that deposit to create good, to help those who are struggling, to advance society. When you view money as a tool for work rather than a source of status, the disease of greed begins to dissolve. Second, there is the intellectual remedy. This is about shifting your perspective on time. We need to cultivate the long-term view. If you truly believe that this life is just a short chapter in a very long book, your relationship with stuff changes. You realize that you are a traveler. You don't hoard furniture in a train station waiting room. You use it, you appreciate it, and then you board the train. And finally, there is the remedy of experience. This is the understanding that life is a school. If we fail the test of wealth, if we let it harden our hearts, we may have to come back and take the test of poverty. Knowing this helps us develop empathy. When we see someone struggling, we don't judge them. We realize they might be an advanced soul learning a difficult lesson in patience and resignation. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with this thought. Greed is, at its core, a misunderstanding. It is mistaking the tool for the goal. It is mistaking the map for the territory. The consequences of this mistake are anxiety in this life and a heavy, earthbound confusion in the next. But the cure is simple, though it is not easy. It is detachment. It is walking through the world with open hands rather than clenched fists. It is realizing that the only things you truly own are your thoughts, your love, and your character. As you go about your week, look at the things around you, enjoy them, be grateful for them, but hold them lightly. Remember, you are the traveler, not the luggage. Thank you for listening. Until next time, travel light.